Now, is the Home Office in crisis? Well, GB News has an exclusive leaked Home Office document which exposes Britain's broken immigration system. And this comes as reports suggest Catholic and Baptist churches helped Clapham chemical attack suspect Abdelaziz claim asylum, and yet he still hasn't been found. And you may also remember Nottingham triple killer Valdo Colacane, who brutally killed and stabbed 3 people to death in Nottingham. Well, he entered into the UK legally, and today it's been emerging that he's entitled to claim thousands of pounds in state benefits. You couldn't make it up. Is our system completely broken? And also in the news today, a debate kicks off in about an hour's time. Is it time to deport asylum seeker criminals from the UK? Well, there's lots to get stuck into there. And joining me now in the studio is the Conservative MP for Ipswich, Tom Hunt. Tom, welcome to the studio. Let's start with the Colacane situation, the Vincent Colacane, so Valdo Colacane emerged. He's entitled to £360 a month of benefits. This is the law, but the mother of one of the killed, Emma Webber, Barnaby's mum, saying this may be the law, but we strongly suggest the law is wrong and it urgently needs to be reviewed.
I think she's right. I mean, I think that, this is an individual who has killed, murdered, 3 young people, and I think it's this slight discrepancy about whether it's a prison or whether it's got a psychiatric element. Ultimately, I do not think he should be receiving any money at all from a taxpayer. I think he's already abused the trust of a British taxpayer. He's already abused the trust of people of this country. So no, I absolutely share the anger of the mother in question.
Meanwhile, Abdelaziz, I find it astonishing, I don't know about you, Tom, that in a city where you can't even drop a ciggy on the floor without getting a ticket, you can simply vanish into thin air if your name is Abdelaziz. Huge questions being asked after it emerged yesterday about his criminal record, multiple sexual offences, and yet was still granted asylum on the third attempt, of course, after miraculously seeing the light and converting to Christianity. The big question is this, Tom: is the Home Office completely and utterly failing in its duty?
Well, I think there's a number of different elements here. I think that one element is the role of the Archbishop of Canterbury. I think he seems to be very much against any kind of border control. He seems to be pro-open borders. Any attempt to control immigration, he fights and militates against. And a lot of his people follow his leadership within the Church and do exactly the same thing. I think it's deeply concerning, the role of the Church of England in relation to the immigration debate. And in terms of these specific examples we've seen who have been helping people game the system. In terms of the Home Office, the problem is a lot of it is the human rights framework within which we're operating. And I think, frankly, until we make those big changes, I think we're going to continue to struggle. And I do think I have come to a conclusion some time ago, for example, that I think we should leave the European Convention of Human Rights. I think that is, we will eventually end up leaving it. That's my prediction. I'd rather it was sooner rather than later. I've
heard a rumour swirling around Westminster that there could be an attempt to throw that question onto the general election ticket at the same time, as a way of really forcing a point of difference between the Conservatives and the other parties. Is there any merit in this rumour? So I've actually got quite a niche view on the ECHR. A lot of people think that, because of the magnitude of leaving it, we'd have to put it in a manifesto. We'd sort of potentially even have to have a referendum on it. I just leave it. Ultimately, when it comes to that, having a mandate, when it comes to manifestos, we had a really clear manifesto in 2019 to take back control, to take back control of our borders. And that was in broad headlights. And we've got a mandate of 80 seats to take back control. And if it is the case, the ECHR, amongst other things, is preventing us in our ability to fulfil that democratic mandate, we should simply leave it. And that brings me on to the next point, the Rwanda files. The GB News has seen leaked documents from the Home Office. It revealed that only 12% of illegal arrivals would be removed each year in the best case scenario. This is the systemic attempt to derail Rwanda, to prevent the flights getting off the ground. Who's responsible?
Look, I think that the most depressing thing is that the Rwanda scheme hasn't been given a chance to work. I continue to believe wholeheartedly, if you got flights off at scale to Rwanda and potentially other safe third countries, and I think others would fall into line after, if Rwanda was seen to work, I think we could get other agreements with other countries. I think it would provide a deterrent. It would have a major impact in terms of the number of people trying to get here. But the problem is, until that deterrent's up and working, and whilst we have the limitations placed on us by things like the European Convention of Human Rights, it's going to be really, really difficult.
And presumably, Tom, miscreants like Abdul Azidi would have been deported to Rwanda a long time ago if that scheme were in place.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we appear to have a system at the moment where the interest of a British citizen is right at the bottom of the pile when it comes to the list of priorities. At the top are individuals like him, and at the bottom is a British taxpayer. And I think that has got to change drastically, because I think the danger is people just get increasingly fed up. There's a deep unfairness to this, mounting anger, and I think it falls to us to take action on this, because we know if the Labour Party got in, all of this will get a lot worse. Which is my fear.
What's your take on this kind of conversion therapy racket, is what some people are calling it? It seems to be going on within the churches. Magically, we're seeing queues and queues of asylum seekers seeing the light, becoming Christian.
This is ridiculous. I mean, it'd be one thing if somebody could clearly evidence that, if they'd been in Iran, and they could clearly evidence that they'd been a Christian for a long time in Iran and had been persecuted because of it, and they could evidence it. This isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about people who have come over here, and miraculously, once they're here, decided they're a Christian. And in the case of this disgusting individual who threw alkaline on the faces of a woman and children, his friends still say that he's a practicing Muslim. But I've seen it. I've seen some examples of this locally. I remember going to a church, and I was a bit sceptical. There's a group of people at the back who allegedly had just converted to Christianity, and I remember going up to him and probing him on it and saying, "Look, what was the key moment where you found the Lord? What was it?" And being met by sort of blank looks and not a huge amount in terms of by way of a response.
There's no comprehension whatsoever.
The problem is the Archbishop of Canterbury is running the Church of England into the ground. Congregations are dwindling, and I think it's because he's taken his eye off his day job, which is to preach the gospel. Well,
he's turned into a newfound John the Baptist, so long as you're a certain demographic. I need to quickly ask you about a bit of a hoo-ha today at PMQs. Keir Starmer demanding Rishi Sunak apologises about a comment where Rishi claimed that a number of U-turns that Starmer had made, one of which was on trans issues, saying that 99% of women can't have a penis, which means 0.1% can. He then turned it to Brianna Jai's mother, who was in the gallery today, and said shame and demanded an apology. What's your take on this?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I've obviously got huge sympathy with the family member of the person who was killed. But I really don't think that tragic case is associated in any way with what the Prime Minister said today. The Prime Minister raised a legitimate point about Sir Keir Starmer's flexibility on the issue of what constitutes a woman. And I think it's legitimate for the Prime Minister to point that out. I don't even know whether the Prime Minister was aware who was in the gallery today. Probably not. He raised a question about which went to the core of Keir Starmer, the man, and the fluidity of all of his views, and I think he was entitled to do so. And is there now a case being made, would you say, that Starmer has thrown this grieving mother into the media spotlight? I mean, the press will be harassing her now for a statement. It seems very inappropriate, and if I was Sir Keir Starmer, it's certainly not something I would do. And conflating the two things, I think, is sort of highly inappropriate, and somehow insinuating the Prime Minister sort of deliberately did this to cause offence to somebody who was grieving. It's absurd. I think it's a wrong move by Keir Starmer. The Prime Minister was entitled to say what he said, and I'm pleased that he's not apologising for what he said. Okay.